All right, guys, we're here at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, where Alabama has just lost to Georgia in the national championship game. A disappointing finish to the season for the Crimson Tide, who at times, Mac, and I'm joined by Mac Hereford here, former Alabama player. At times, this team, we didn't think they would make it here. We didn't think that the team had what it took to get to this point. And there were times in this game tonight, Mac, where it looked like they were going to pull it off. I mean, I don't. I think the final score is maybe not perfectly indicative of how this game went for the majority of the game. Would you say that's fair?
I'd say that's definitely fair. I mean, like we were just talking about, like there was plenty of opportunities where we were still in the game, even late just then before that interception.
Sure.
We still had an opportunity to win the ball game, and we didn't do it. We didn't get the job done.
Yeah. So listen, if you guys have thoughts, reactions, we want to get you guys involved in the show. This is our last post-game show of the year, brought to you by our good friends at Medical Properties Trust. So get your thoughts in now. Tell us what you're thinking about tonight, about next season. We'll pull them up. We're here live in the stadium, and we're going to chat with you guys. I mean, look, ultimately some positive reactions here that we're seeing already from the fans. I mean, I don't know that there's – look, it's never good, Mac, to lose the national championship game. That's not how you want to go out. But in terms of crushing losses, I don't know that I necessarily put this one up there that high. I mean, we've seen Alabama not even get the opportunity to reach this point in certain seasons. We've seen them get here and just totally get wiped off the floor by Clemson back in 2018. I think this team looked like they deserved to be here, and they just came up a couple of players short, really. I mean, what do you, if you had to watch this game, I know you haven't had a chance to really dig into it. We just finished watching it, but what do you kind of feel like was the difference tonight?
Yeah, and I know we talked about it, but we have on defense, you got Josh Jobe, who's out.
Sure.
You have Jalen Armour Davis. On offense, we already had Mechie out. We talked about that a little bit in the pregame show yesterday. And then losing Jamison Williams. We're down some of our top skilled players. And it's just like that's four major key players that we need. In Georgia, they played a lot better this game. Their defense looked good. They stepped up, and we needed a couple of things. We needed a couple of guys, and the younger guys, weren't used to this environment, I don't think, and they had some opportunities and, missed out a little bit. But overall, I'm really proud of the team, and it's a pretty special experience even to just get to this part of the year.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of folks saying proud of the team. They won with with what they had to play with. I think not to totally focus on the positive. I mean, ultimately it's a loss. They're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure some stuff out. But man, the defensive performance tonight for 3.5 quarters, a truly incredible performance by this defense to hold Georgia down to next to nothing for most of this game. I mean, we knew that this was a good group up front. But this might have been, again, other than sort of the very end of the game where it just had been on the field too much, this was maybe the best defensive performance we've seen out of Alabama this season.
Yeah, it really was. It was a strong defensive performance. And even lacking some guys, I mean, just like we talked about, a cohesive unit and guys really battling, and they did it to the fourth quarter. They gave it everything they got, and again, I'm proud of them. It's crazy cool to think, like when I was back here, at this point in different seasons, you got to think about how special of an experience it is, and also how it's kind of a sad thing for the guys who are seniors. This could be their last game of the season, and guys who left it all out there on the field. So I'm proud of those guys and happy for them to get to this point.
Yeah. Well, so listen, I don't want to totally dismiss the game. I mean, we've got plenty of coverage out there for you guys. I mean, Nick Saban had a lot of great things to say. The press conference is up wherever you're watching this, by the way, if you want to go back and watch what Nick Saban had to say. I do want to ask you about, looking forward to next year, and that was something that we talked about this week when we were doing some of our other shows out here in Indianapolis. And this is a team that has a lot of young guys that are going to be back on this team again next year. They may even end up returning some guys that we're not necessarily expecting them to. But overall, I mean, look, Bryce Young, Will Anderson. Basically, every receiver that was on the field tonight after Jameson Williams went out. This group of guys largely is going to be back again next season. What first of all, I mean, how excited are you about that group and what they can do next year? But also, I mean, when you watch that team tonight, what's the big thing they've got to address and improve on in the offseason?
Yeah, I think that the major thing we saw with a couple of those younger guys is just playing this type of environment. Everyone I would say is prepared. This Alabama way, like preparation is unbelievable. It's next man up. But as we saw, some guys got a chance out there and didn't quite get the job done as much as I would want them to, or play at that high level. And I
some
think
drops and some key moments tonight. I think that will kind of live in Bama fans' memories a little bit.
Absolutely. And then we had the field goal that was blocked, and it's like mistakes like that. So I think Coach Saban's going to do a good job of telling those guys. I think he's probably going to tell them he's proud of them because obviously they did play a hard season, but they're going to have to focus on the details. And I'm excited, like we were talking about, I'm very excited about the younger guys.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that I think that, like you said, it reminds me of that season that we actually beat Georgia in the national championship, where we had all those young guys play. Similar to where we had a bunch of young guys playing tonight who are getting opportunities. They're going to be back next year, more experienced and ready to go.
And look, maybe the difference in that game and this one is there's not a Devontae Smith out there. They don't grow on trees.
A Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, though, some good plays by some of those younger guys, but they're going to need to give more. I think in the coming years, they're going to need to be a bigger part of what happens on the offense. And not to mention, look, Alabama fans know this better than anybody. We don't want to say if so and so hadn't gotten hurt, we would have won the national title. But it's a long list of guys.
There's a long list.
Jameson Williams, you got John Mechie, you got multiple starting defensive backs. Not to mention that earlier in the season, you lose two super talented young running backs who will both presumably be back next season too. So even though we're talking about a young team that was out there tonight that will mostly be coming back, there's also a lot of guys who are very talented who didn't really play most or at least a big chunk of the season because they were hurt this year.
Absolutely. And we didn't even talk about, now that I think about it, we completely forgot about Chris Allen,
Yeah,
and
sure.
It's like, think about him adding with Will Anderson.
Right.
It would have been just even more pressure on Stetson Bennett.
It's a situation where, look, I mean, you have to have a lot of depth in college football. Alabama has as much as anybody, but they had a lot of injuries this year, and I'm just not sure that some folks in here earlier said we ran out of healthy players. That might be a pretty good description of kind of what happened down the stretch for this team.
Absolutely. And like I said, I just at the same time, I wish those younger guys, I know it's crazy, but Coach Saban preaches all the time, you prepare for that 1 second, that one play. And I think that some guys missed out on that chance. But
Sure.
We will be back. I think, we're going to be back next year like we talked about. This got the younger crowd that's going to be coming back. We got some of those older guys who didn't get to play this season. And I'm excited for next season. And, I'm proud of this year's team as well.
I know you're a receiver. We've talked a lot about the receivers and the DBs tonight. I do want to ask you about the offensive line who, they've been a bit of a story this year for this team. They've had some ups and downs. Overall, your thoughts on how Alabama's line looked out there tonight?
Honestly, I think they looked great. It's tough. Like we were talking about earlier in the season, they did have a lot of issues.
Right.
But then SEC championship, they looked good. You got Seth McLaughlin in there, who's younger, looked great. Emil Ekiyor was looking great. You have all these guys, and I saw them just fighting and they're battling in the trenches.
Right.
So I'm proud of that offensive line unit, and they definitely stepped up throughout this postseason.
All right. Well, I don't know how much more. Look, we've got some great comments coming in. Some folks talking about again the injuries. Still won the SEC, which is true. Alabama's the only team that beat the national champs this year. That's something.
And the SEC team won the. At the end of the day, an SEC team did win the national championship, which is good.
They did for the third year in a row. I think going back and looking at this season, Mac, it's always hard to know how to put in context a season at Alabama. The seasons where you don't win the national championship get forgotten in a hurry. But when you look back at this season right now, while it's still fresh, what do you kind of think is the character of this year's team? How will this year's team be remembered?
I think a team that obviously, like you said, at points in the season, we didn't know if they were going to make it to the national championship.
Yeah.
But they were a team that battled. They're a team that has a lot of young guys. They fought, and their next year is going to lead into a rebuild team. They're going to have a new story, but this team, they gave it all they got. I'm proud of them. I think the fans should be too. I think we should honestly have more fans in these games.
Two very memorable classic wins that I think will still go down in the books for Alabama between that Iron Bowl and that SEC championship.
Two big games, yeah. And
so,
then Bryce Young, Heisman.
And a Heisman season. Yeah, how soon we forget. No, look, plenty to celebrate for Alabama for this team. It's obviously a disappointing finish to the season, but we know the story goes on. We know it doesn't end here. Nick Saban, again, had plenty to say in his post-game press conference and really seemed kind of upbeat. Didn't seem super upset. I know some fans don't like to see that. You guys want to see him mad after a loss. But he seemed kind of happy for Kirby, for his former assistant to win the title. He just sort of, took the approach of, you got to hand it to him. They beat us in the fourth quarter, and that's something that Nick Saban tries to get out of his own teams. It's something he obviously admired about what Georgia did tonight. But I think he knows he's got a great team that's going to be capable of competing for national titles year in and year out. This is not the end for this Alabama program by any stretch. So we'll see. We'll see what things look like in the off season, and I think we'll still continue to be hearing about more transfers coming in. More, I'll ask you this one final thing before we wrap up. If you've got to go out on the market and get a transfer at any position for this team, what is it? What are you trying to add to this team right now?
That's a tough question. Gosh, I would probably, if the running backs get healthy, they're going to be great.
They got so many running backs.
Got so many wide receivers. Yeah. Defensive backs, depending on if those guys are able to get healthy. And pretty much, honestly, like we've talked about, pretty much stacked and reloaded at every single position.
Yeah.
I would say the offensive line, I know we'll have maybe a guy or two leave. Right. And then some guys were injured there this year. So I think that's one spot we'll definitely want some more people. And then defensive line as well. We have some studs, but I'd like to see some more guys that just bring a little bit more. We didn't have like a Quentin Williams this year.
In the middle?
Yeah, or Jonathan Allen.
Sure.
In the middle. But otherwise, the secondary looked pretty dang good.
Yeah.
Some guys, a lot of the guys.
And young, too, yeah.
Very young. And, one more point I wanted to bring up. We were talking about how Coach Saban's reaction to the game. I think it's really interesting because when we lost to Clemson one year, it's a really cool thing to see a coach take, like, full responsibility. And I think that's kind of where he's at. Like,
yeah.
The players, I feel like he felt like they gave it their all, did everything they could. And, he takes a lot of the blame on himself. He takes it tough, but I think that's a really cool thing to see from a player and then, as a coach doing that for the players and stuff like that. Because I think he really does. I think he takes full responsibility. And it's like, it's not all your fault, coach. You know what I mean? But
I don't think there's a lot of screaming and kicking and throwing things in the locker room tonight. I mean, I think I could be wrong. I'm not in there. They're not letting us in the locker room this year. But I feel like this is a team. There's some teams where you feel like you really should have had it and you let it slip away somehow. I don't know that I necessarily feel that way about this one. I think this is a game where it's going to hurt, but I think you can still feel proud about what you accomplished this season as a team. So guys, thank you for joining us in the comments. Mac, thank you for joining us all week here as we got ready for the national championship game. We will have plenty of coverage for you as the night goes on. We've got lots of stuff to put up, lots of stories being written over at AL.com. And thanks to our sponsors for Medical Properties Trust for sponsoring everything that we did here in Indianapolis and throughout the playoffs. And thanks once again to you guys for a great football season. And we will say goodnight to you guys. So have a great one. Take it easy, and we'll see you guys again next season.
Medical Properties Trust, at the very heart of healthcare.